I never thought I'd have a wedding story that could rival a reality TV show, but here we are. My wedding day turned into an unhinged circus, courtesy of my mom. The fallout has been nothing short of karma doing its finest work. Buckle up because this is going to be a wild ride. A little backstory to set the stage. My parents were married for 25 years before divorcing 3 years ago. Growing up, my dad was the steady, hard-working type. He had a good-paying job in engineering and was always there for me and my siblings. My mom was more of the social butterfly who loved the spotlight. She was all about appearances, hosting parties, keeping up with trends, and making sure everyone knew how perfect our family was. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. The cracks in their marriage became clear when I was in college. My mom started spending more time out with friends, and my dad started staying at work later. It was like watching two people drift apart in slow motion. But the bombshell came when my mom's affair came to light. She'd been seeing a guy named Rick, who, I kid you not, was her colleague. Classic, right? She tried to keep it quiet, but one of her friends spilled the beans to my dad. After some digging, he confronted her, and she didn't even deny it. She called him boring and said she deserved more excitement. They separated shortly after, and the divorce was messy, to put it mildly. My mom fought tooth and nail for as much money as she could get. What she didn't realize was that my dad had consulted a good lawyer early on. Since my mom was the one at fault and dad was the primary earner, the court didn't look kindly on her demands. She walked away with far less than she expected and has been bitter about it ever since. After the divorce, my mom became unhinged. She went through this weird midlife crisis, posting cringeworthy quotes about being an independent queen, while also constantly complaining about how hard life was now. She leaned heavily on my siblings and me, guilt-tripping us about how we weren't there for her enough. Meanwhile, Rick became a regular fixture in her life. He wasn't awful, but he always struck me as a bit opportunistic. He was younger than my mom, flashy, and seemed more into the free dinners and trips she financed than into her. My siblings and I kept a polite distance from both of them. Fast forward to my wedding, I was marrying my longtime boyfriend, someone my dad absolutely adores. He's always been supportive of our relationship, while my mom has been lukewarm at best. I think she resented that I was closer to my dad, especially after the divorce. My dad and his girlfriend, Lisa, were invited, and so was my mom. I wasn't really sure about inviting my mom and gave it a lot of thought, but in the end, I thought it would be better to keep the peace, a big mistake. The wedding itself was perfect at first. The venue was gorgeous. My fiancé looked amazing, and the ceremony went off without a hitch. My dad walked me down the aisle, and I could see how proud he was. It meant the world to me. My mom, on the other hand, looked like she was itching for attention. She wore this bright red dress that screamed, "Look at me," and kept trying to position herself in all the photos. There was also an awkward moment during family photos when she tried to nudge Lisa out of a shot. Lisa, being the gracious person she is, just stepped aside with a smile, but the tension was thick. Then came the reception. I should have known something was up when my mom and Rick walked in late, arm in arm, and she hadn't even told me she was bringing him. She made a big show of introducing him to everyone, acting like they were Hollywood royalty. It was cringeworthy, but I ignored it. I was too busy enjoying the night to let her antics ruin it. But then came the cake cutting, and my mom decided this was the perfect moment to grab the mic and make a speech. At first, it was the usual stuff about how proud she was of me. Then she veered off script. She started talking about second chances and how love can find you when you least expect it. My stomach dropped. She called Rick up to the front, got down on one knee, and proposed to him at my wedding, in front of all our friends and family. The silence was deafening. You could hear a pin drop. My dad's face was a mix of shock and something else, maybe pity. Rick looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. My bridesmaids were exchanging horrified glances, and me? I was absolutely mortified. I wanted to crawl under the table and hide. But karma, as they say, works fast. What my mom didn't know was that her carefully crafted plan was about to spectacularly backfire. Rick, visibly uncomfortable and caught off guard, rejected her right there in front of everyone. His exact words, which I heard later from multiple guests, were something like this: "This isn't the right time or place, and I don't think this is what we discussed." Essentially, He publicly humiliated her in the same way she was trying to humiliate my dad and make a spectacle of my wedding. The aftermath was immediate. Guests were whispering. Some looked shocked, others distinctly uncomfortable. My new mother-in-law was giving me sympathetic looks, while my dad sat there, remarkably composed. My mom, however, looked like she wanted to scream, cry, and disappear all at once. Little did my mom know, her dramatic moment was about to cost her everything she'd been planning and hoping for. Apparently, someone at the wedding made a video of the whole thing and sent it to her wealthy aunt. Now, here's where it gets interesting. For a long, long time, we all knew that my mom was set to inherit everything from this aunt, who didn't have any kids of her own. Let me tell you, her aunt is rich. She lives in a massive estate, has a collection of antique cars, and has investments that could probably fund a city. My mom had been counting on this inheritance to keep up her lifestyle and, frankly, flaunted it in my dad's face. But when her aunt saw the video, she was livid. This aunt is old school, valuing family loyalty and decorum above all else. She saw my mom's antics at the wedding as the ultimate betrayal of those values. It didn't take much for her to change her will and remove mom completely from it. Meanwhile, my mom has been in full meltdown mode. She's been calling me non-stop, begging me to fix this with her aunt. She thinks I can magically undo the damage and convince her aunt to change her mind. I told her it wasn't my problem and that maybe she should have thought about the consequences before hijacking my wedding. Of course, that didn't go over well. She's been posting vague, passive-aggressive things on Facebook about being betrayed by her own children and how families should always stick together. It's honestly exhausting. I'm just trying to move on and enjoy being a newlywed, but the drama keeps pulling me back in. My mom's latest guilt trip is that I've failed as her daughter by not supporting her. She even had the audacity to say that if my marriage ever falls apart, I'll regret not standing by her. It's like she's trying to drag me down into her chaos. Honestly, I don't even know where to go from here. Should I just cut her off entirely? Or is there some way to salvage this mess without her dragging me down? What would you do if you were in my shoes? Update 1. Hi guys, many of you asked for an update, so here it is. To be honest, not much has changed since the last post. In fact, things seem to have gone a little downhill, at least for mom. Let me start by saying that this whole situation feels surreal. Pardon me, you still can't believe my wedding turned into a live-action soap opera, but here we are. After the disaster at the reception, I decided to put some distance between myself and mom. It wasn't just for my sanity. It was also because I genuinely believe she needs to learn to deal with the consequences of her actions. Unfortunately, she doesn't seem to see it that way. One of my siblings, the middle child in our family, has somehow managed to stay in contact with mom through all of this. She's a therapist, which probably explains why she's the calmest and most level-headed out of all of us. While the rest of us have mostly kept our distance for our own sanity, she's chosen to stay involved, at least to some extent. She believes that mom is struggling emotionally and mentally and could really use professional help. Honestly, I admire her patience and compassion. I don't know how she does it. Through her, we've been getting updates on how things have been going for mom, and it's not looking good. In fact, it seems like things have gone from bad to worse. The drama with Rick, you remember him, the guy she proposed to at my wedding, hasn't just caused chaos in her personal life. It's now spilling over into her professional life too. Apparently, their relationship has become a hot topic of gossip at work. People found out about their romance, and let's just say it hasn't gone over well. It turns out that the company has a very strict no-dating policy, especially when it comes to relationships between managers and subordinates. And as you've probably guessed by now, mom is Rick's manager. From what my sister has told us, mom has already been called into HR and received a formal warning. And this wasn't just a gentle, hey, maybe cool it with the office romance kind of warning. It was serious. They laid out the consequences if things didn't improve, and losing her job was very much on the table. This is where things get even messier. Mom has been struggling financially ever since the divorce from my dad. Losing her job would be a complete disaster for her. She's been scraping by, trying to maintain her lifestyle, and let's just say that her savings, if she ever had much, are probably running on fumes at this point. Speaking of Rick, he's officially pulled a full-on vanishing act. No calls, No texts, no nothing. He's completely ghosted my mom, and honestly, none of us are surprised. Mom, however, is acting like this is the most shocking betrayal in the history of humanity. She's been ranting non-stop to my sister about how Rick used her and led her on. But come on, who didn't see this coming a mile away? Let's not forget how this all started. She proposed to him in the middle of someone else's wedding, mine of all people, blindsiding him in front of a crowd. What did she think was going to happen after that? That he'd sweep her off her feet and they'd ride off into the sunset? It's classic mom, creating chaos, embarrassing herself, and then blaming everyone else when it inevitably blows up in her face. From what we can piece together, Rick probably realized he'd gotten in way over his head, the drama, the awkwardness at work, the public proposal. It's a lot to handle, and Rick doesn't exactly strike me as the stick around for the chaos type. My siblings and I are convinced he blocked her because, according to my sister, she's been obsessively trying to contact him. She's called, texted, even emailed him, but it's radio silence. Instead of taking a step back and reflecting, she's doubling down on her victim narrative, like she always does. Apparently, in Mom's mind, all 5 of us kids should be rallying around her to help her through these tough times. She's been telling my sister that we're ungrateful and disloyal for not supporting her the way she expects. How exactly? By fixing the mess she created? By pretending everything she's done is okay? She even took it a step further and went on a full rant about me specifically. According to Mom, I'm an unreliable, selfish woman who doesn't care about family. This is coming from the same woman who hijacked my wedding to propose to her boyfriend. But sure, I'm the selfish one. My sister, bless her heart, actually tried to reason with her. She explained how hurtful Mom's actions were and how they overshadowed what was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. But you know Mom, she didn't hear a single word. Instead, she dismissed everything, saying I was too sensitive and that I should have been honored to share the spotlight with her. Honored? The mental gymnastics required to justify her behavior are truly next level. It's exhausting, honestly. Every time I think there's a chance she might reflect, or even just pause for a moment, she finds a way to double down on the drama. She's so focused on being the victim that she can't or won't see the harm she's caused. On the bride's side, my husband and his family have been absolute angels through all this. I was so embarrassed after everything that happened, but my mother-in-law pulled me aside and reassured me. She said that sometimes you just have to accept that family comes with baggage, and it's not a reflection on me or my character. Her words were so comforting, and I'm incredibly grateful to have such a kind and understanding support system. My husband has been amazing too, constantly reminding me that this is just a bump in the road and not to let it overshadow our happiness. Tomorrow, we're leaving for our honeymoon, and honestly, I can't wait to get away from all this drama, even if it's just for a week. I need a break from the constant chaos. We've planned a relaxing trip with no phones or internet, aside from emergencies, of course. So, hopefully, I'll come back feeling refreshed and ready to tackle whatever comes next. Thanks again to everyone who's been following my story and offering advice. Your comments have been incredibly validating and have helped me feel less alone in all this craziness. I'll check back in after our honeymoon if there's any more drama or resolution to share. Until then, wish me a peaceful week away from it all. Bye for now. Update 2. Hi guys, it's been 2 days since I came back from my honeymoon, and you won't believe me when I tell you what all has happened. I thought things were settling down after the drama Mom caused, but apparently, the chaos wasn't done with me yet. The day we got back, I was unpacking, trying to mentally prepare myself to get back into normal life when I got a call from my mom's aunt, the one Mom was counting on for her big inheritance. At first, I didn't even know what to make of it. She asked me to come over the next day, saying that all my siblings, Dad, and Mom were going to be there too. I honestly hesitated. The last thing I wanted was to be in the same room as Mom after everything that had gone down. The drama, the betrayal, the whole mess. It just felt too much, but her aunt insisted, saying it was really important and that I absolutely needed to be there. After some back and forth, I reluctantly agreed. So the next day, I showed up at her aunt's house, and let me tell you, the tension in the air was thick enough to slice with a knife. Mom was already there, pacing around the living room, muttering to herself. She seemed like a bomb about to explode, and I wasn't sure if I was more nervous or just exhausted by the thought of dealing with her. She was rambling on and on about betrayal, about how we were all ungrateful, and how no one really cared about her. Honestly, it was a little uncomfortable, and I figured it would be best to just keep my distance and not engage. Then Dad walked in, and I swear it was like someone flipped a switch. Mom's volume instantly doubled, and she started throwing snarky comments left and right. She had something to say about everyone: Dad, me, my siblings. Nobody was safe. I heard her call us leeches, traitors, and ungrateful in the same breath, as if she were the one who'd been wronged. It was honestly wild. I couldn't even process how she was twisting everything around to make it seem like we were the ones causing the problems. But here's the thing: her aunt wasn't having it. She's one of the few people who isn't afraid to stand up to Mom, and honestly, watching her do it was a little satisfying. She shut Mom down pretty quickly, telling her to stop making a scene and just sit down. I could tell that Mom didn't like it, but at that point, she had no choice but to listen. Once we were all seated, her aunt finally got to the reason she'd called us all there. She said she'd been thinking long and hard about what to do with her estate, and I could almost see Mom perk up at that point. She was probably thinking that her aunt had forgotten about everything and was about to announce that she would be inheriting the whole estate, or at least a significant chunk of it. It was like she thought everything would go back to the way she imagined, but unfortunately for her, things weren't going to go the way she planned. Then, she dropped the bombshell. She said that she had originally planned to leave the majority of her wealth to Mom, which honestly wasn't surprising. Mom had always made it clear that she was counting on that inheritance to help her out of her financial struggles. But after everything that had happened recently, the wedding fiasco, her behavior towards all of us, and the drama surrounding Rick, it was clear to her aunt that this wasn't the right choice anymore. So instead of giving it all to Mom, she announced that the estate would be divided equally among all 5 of us kids. That's right, 5 equal shares to be distributed after her passing. The moment her aunt said that, the room went completely dead silent. I don't think anyone was prepared for that. Mom's face was something I'll never forget. First, it was just complete shock. She couldn't process what she just heard. It was as if her brain couldn't catch up with the reality of what was happening. And then it quickly shifted to rage. Her eyes narrowed, her fists clenched, and I could see her entire body tense up. I knew it was coming, the explosion. Mom completely lost it. She started accusing her aunt of being manipulated by us, claiming we were all part of some scheme to take what was rightfully hers. She couldn't comprehend that her actions had led to this moment, so instead of taking responsibility, she lashed out. She said we were all conspiring to make her end up poor and alone, and that we wanted to see her fail. It was honestly ridiculous. She had zero self-awareness. But wait, it didn't stop there. Oh no. She started yelling at her aunt, saying that after everything she'd done for her over the years, she owed her this and that. It's when I had to bite my tongue to stop myself from rolling my eyes. Seriously, this is the same woman who threw a tantrum at her own daughter's wedding and caused all that drama. But to her, her years of dutiful behavior somehow made her entitled to everything. It was the ultimate example of how she always thinks the world owes her something, regardless of her behavior. Her aunt, though, was completely unfazed. She just stayed calm, probably more calm than any of us could have been in that situation. She simply said, "This decision is final," and didn't entertain any more of Mom's drama. It was like she had made her peace with the situation, and there was no more arguing about it. Of course, Mom wasn't ready to accept that. At that point, it became painfully clear that staying any longer would just escalate the situation. My siblings and I exchanged glances, and we all agreed it was time to leave. Dad left with us, and honestly, the whole ride home was spent decompressing from the emotional toll of the afternoon. What really struck me, though, was how Mom had turned on all of us, even my sister, who had been trying to help her all along. My therapist sister has been the only one maintaining any kind of relationship with Mom, and even she was accused of being part of some elaborate plot to destroy her. It was outrageous and heartbreaking at the same time. My sister looked genuinely hurt, and I think this might be the final straw for her. I don't blame her if she decides to cut ties completely. For now, we're all just trying to get back to our normal lives and leave this mess behind us. I'm focusing on work and spending time with my husband, trying to rebuild the sense of peace that's been missing since the wedding. My siblings are doing the same, though we've been keeping in touch much more often than usual to support each other. I wish I could say I'm surprised by Mom's behavior, but sadly, I'm not. She's always been someone who refuses to take responsibility for her actions and finds a way to blame others when things don't go her way. Still, seeing her burn so many bridges with her own family has been a tough pill to swallow. At this point, I'm not sure if there's any hope for her to mend these relationships, but I'm not holding my breath. Thanks again for reading and for all your advice and kind words. It's been a wild ride, and I appreciate having a place to share it all. I'll keep you posted if anything else happens, but for now, I'm just hoping for some much-needed calm in my life. Update 3. Hi guys, it's been almost a month since my first post, and I think this might be my final update. A lot has happened, and honestly, it's been so chaotic. I think we've gone through all the emotions in the book: frustration, relief, disbelief, you name it. I'm finally starting to feel like this chapter is coming to a close, though not without some more drama along the way, because of course, we're talking about my mom here. After the chaos that unfolded at Mom's aunt's house, things went eerily quiet for a brief moment. I thought maybe she's finally taking some time to reflect. Maybe she's realized the consequences of her actions and is working on herself. Silly me. Turns out, she was just regrouping and waiting for her next move. This time, it was my mom who reached out, not to me, but to my sister, the therapist. She's always been the one to give Mom the benefit of the doubt, despite everything. She's patient, kind, and somehow still manages to see the good in people. But even she was surprised when Mom called out of the blue. Buckle up, because this is a doozy. Mom got fired. Yep, after months of barely holding on to her job, she finally managed to cross the line. Here's what happened. Remember Rick, the guy she ambushed with a proposal at my wedding? Apparently, he got a new job at another company. Good for him, I guess. He came back to their office one last time to collect his things, and Mom decided this was her moment to confront him. And where did she do it? In the office, because that's such a great idea when you're already on thin ice with HR. From what my sister pieced together, Mom caused such a scene that HR had to intervene. I'm not sure what exactly she said, but whatever it was enough to seal her fate. She was escorted out of the building, and a few days later, her termination was made official. It's shocking but also not. She knew the company had a strict no-dating policy, and she'd already been warned multiple times about her behavior. But instead of playing it safe, she let her emotions get the best of her and threw away her job. Now Ricky's already out of there and likely moving on with his life, with no loss. Mom, on the other hand, is left with no job, no income, and, surprise, surprise, no accountability for her actions. Instead of owning up to what she did, she turned to my sister for help. At first, my sister was hesitant to get involved, which says a lot because she's usually the one who steps up. But Mom didn't exactly ask for help nicely. Instead, she tried her usual guilt-tripping tactics. Things like, "I've always been there for you." Spoiler. She hasn't. And, "How can you abandon your own mother in time of need?" It's classic Mom behavior, and it doesn't hit the way she thinks it does when guilt didn't work. Mom switched strategies. She told my sister that she'd even apologize to me if that's what it took to make things right. My sister said it was obvious from the get-go that this wasn't a genuine offer. It was just another manipulation tactic to get what she wanted. Still, my sister decided to help in her own way. She told Mom that she would loan her some money to help her get back on her feet, but that's it. No emotional rekindling, no weekly phone calls, and certainly no pretending like everything's fine. She made it crystal clear that this was a one-time thing and that she was doing it because she felt it was her responsibility as a daughter, not because she wanted any kind of relationship with Mom. Honestly, I'm so proud of her for setting these boundaries. It's not easy, especially when you're dealing with someone like our mom, who has a knack for exploiting people's kindness. After their conversation, I got a text from Mom. It was an apology, though calling it that feels generous. It was more like a vague acknowledgement that she had made mistakes and hoped we could move forward as a family. There was no mention of the wedding, the proposal, or the years of hurt she'd caused. It felt hollow, like she was checking off a box rather than genuinely trying to make amends. I haven't responded, and honestly, I don't think I will. I've spent so much of my life trying to navigate her drama and protect myself from her toxicity. This whole experience has shown me that it's okay to set boundaries and prioritize my own well-being. I don't owe her a relationship just because she's my mother. As for the rest of us, we're all moving forward in our own ways. My siblings and I are closer than ever, which is probably the one silver lining in all of this. My husband has been my rock through everything, and his family has been incredibly supportive too. I feel so lucky to have them in my corner. Mom, on the other hand, has burned almost every bridge she had. She's alienated her own children, her aunt, and even her former colleagues. It's sad, but it's also the result of her own choices. At this point, it's up to her to decide if she wants to change. But as for me, I'm done waiting for her to become the mother I needed her to be.